In the midst of plenty, however, the Roman people forgot what freedom entailed. They forgot that the essence of freedom is the proper limitation of government.
Good afternoon, Duke University. This is good. They've got wheels on the podium, just to warn you. I just came from introducing Dr. Ron Paul at UNC's Carmichael Auditorium, and the crowd there was really excited. So I need to know right now if people here want a lecture or if people here are excited about liberty and freedom. Good. Because I am too, and it is in this context. This video is a remarkable video, the documentary we've just watched, and I would strongly encourage you to get a copy of the DVD, watch it in its entirety online, because where this video goes after talking about the political consequences of different systems of government is talking about the economic consequences of different systems of government. Has anybody here been noticing that our grocery bills are getting a little bit more expensive? Maybe our gas prices are going up. And maybe people are beginning to wonder if it's a really good idea that our government in Washington continues to borrow and print $1 to $3 billion a day. Not a good idea. And I got to tell you, I'm a Duke alum. It's a real privilege and a pleasure to be back here. And I could never have imagined, thank you. It's a much more comforting shade of blue that I'm seeing in the seats from where I was earlier today. But a couple years ago, certainly when I was back here at Duke, I could never have imagined that I would actually be running for Congress in North Carolina's 4th District. But it gradually became clear to me after going through engineering school, going through medical school, and starting my neurosurgery residency here at Duke, and then leaving surgery to start a hospital software company. When I left to start that software company, I had a remarkable opportunity to take a step back from what previously were technical and scientific pursuits and think about how the world works. Because all of a sudden, I'm in a completely different environment. I'm trying to raise money. I'm trying to build a business. And when you start interacting with the financial system, I began to ask questions like any good engineer would do, and I started to dissect the system and ask questions about the system. And when you begin to understand how our banking system works, how our monetary system works, and how those forces interrelate with a federal government that does not know when to say when, you begin to realize that we're getting ourselves into a bit of a pickle. And it is absolutely time that we as free Americans come together to take our country back. Yes? And I get questions all the time as I made the decision to run for office after much careful consideration. How are you going to do it? Everyone who goes up to Washington, they end up corrupt. The system that beats them down. And honestly, before I met the gentleman that I'm privileged to introduce today, I had the same opinion. But for me, the formative event in my life was last May when a good friend of mine forwarded me a YouTube video clip of Dr. Ron Paul speaking in a certain Republican presidential debate in South Carolina. Now, keep in mind that I have been I've been an ardent student of history and economics over the past 8 years, and I've always been very deeply concerned that our nation is on the wrong track. But the question is, who's going to tell the people? Am I the only one that knows about this? Am I the only one concerned about a $9.4 trillion national debt and entitlement obligations totaling over $60 to $70 trillion, depending on what numbers you look at? Am I the only one concerned that our dollar is headed in a place where we don't want it to go? But when I saw Ron Paul in South Carolina speaking the truth about economics, speaking the truth about our obligation to defend our constitutional republic, I was quite simply blown away. Now, I didn't become a supporter overnight. I spent about 3 or so weeks researching him, and I spent a ton of time on Ron Paul Library just reading and reading and reading, and I began to realize, you know what, this is not a politician. He has been carrying the same message for the past 30 years. Where has he been all my life? Well, the answer is really simple. He'd been in Congress all my life. I just hadn't realized he existed. But the amazing thing about discovering him and discovering the message that grew out of his presidential campaign and continues to grow and continues to flourish is that I and so many other Americans are filled with hope because we know that we can take our country back and that we must take our country back. My wife and I have 3 children. People ask me why I'm running. I'm running for my children because I want them to have a future in this nation. And as many people as I have to say, yeah, no, actually we don't live in a democracy. A democracy is just 2 wolves and a sheep deciding what to have for dinner, right? We live in a republic, a constitutional republic. And there are a lot of people right now, ladies and gentlemen, who are feeling like sheep. And it is time for us to continue to get out there and spread the word about what it means to get back, or rather, to get forward, to move forward to a federal government that, again, follows the U.S. Constitution. What an amazing idea. And in our congressional campaign, we have handed out about 10,000 of these all over the 4th District. And I'll be honest, I'm not a professional politician. And if I'd been really smart about this, I would only give these documents to likely voters in the Republican primary, which is next Tuesday, by the way. Please vote. But I can't keep this out of the hands of Democrats because it's not about partisan politics. It's not about Democrat versus Republican. It's about the United States waking up to the reality that we were meant to be a government, to live under a government that respects the rule of law. And I think in many ways, in the past, we've been our own worst enemy, right? I can remember back to a gentleman named Newt Gingrich who mobilized an incredible wave of political change in the pursuit of what? The contract with America, right? Folks, we don't need to get that creative. We already have a contract with America. It's called our Constitution. So it is time for us to spread that word and to tell our neighbors and tell our friends, and yes, we're all busy, and yes, we're all distracted, but we have a lot of folks today who need to be reminded that it is our obligation to look after our government. And I meet so many principled people, so many good people who come up to me and say, hey, so how do you do what you're doing? How do you run for office? It's easy. You just show up and sign the form, and you're running. You tell people you're running. You make it happen. You get involved. And even if you're not running for office, just getting involved in the Republican Party, which has been another amazing adventure, I might add. I've been a Republican my entire life. I've always considered myself someone who believed in the value of small government, government that protected the rights of the ultimate minority, the individual. But it's a bit of an odd dynamic out there with the Republican Party. And I've got people coming up to me all the time saying, aren't you that Ron Paul libertarian? And I say, no, I'm a Ron Paul Republican. And I think it's time that we not just remind people that it's not about libertarian or Republican or Democrat or whatever political party you affiliate with, but it's time to take the lessons that we've been learning, listening to Dr. Paul and refreshing our minds in the Spring of Liberty, and take those lessons out and just spread them. So this is one of those occasions that, honestly, a year ago I could not have possibly imagined it. And it is such a remarkable privilege to have the opportunity to introduce someone who has honestly done something that I never expected to see happen. Because when you see someone who stands up not as a politician looking to get reelected, but as a principled statesman who stands for something, and more than just something, who stands for the one thing that truly makes us American, it really impressed upon me the importance of all of us getting involved. So I really appreciate everyone's attention and everyone's being here today, and it is my distinct pleasure and honor to introduce one of the most admired people in my life, which is Representative, Physician, and Presidential Candidate, Dr. Ron Paul. Thank you.
Thank you very much.